So people are a bit unhappy about the new Dragon Age game. I've seen a lot of people saying it looked like a hero shooter or mobile game, and the trailer was too quippy and goofy for a Dragon Age game that's supposed to be a gritty, dark fantasy. And I just gotta ask, are y'all new here? First off, Dragon Age has already been a mobile game. It was called Heroes of Dragon Age. It didn't do well, clearly, because it doesn't exist anymore. Also, the first trailer released was a cinematic trailer. And anyone who's been with the Dragon Age series for a while can tell you that none of those cinematic trailers look anything like the games do. Like, just barely anything like it. And this one is no different. The purpose was to get people talking about the game and to drum up interest because marketing and blah blah blah. And you know what? It kind of did it. It served its purpose. Just look at what everyone's currently doing right now. Second thing is, Dragon Age as a series has always had quite a bit of comedy present from the very beginning. Yes, it does get marketed as a dark fantasy and it does have a lot of dark themes, but the balance of comedy and tragedy is one of the best things about the series. In the cinematic trailer for Dragon Age Origins, it starts off with Morgan making a quippy joke in regards to your search for the Urn of Sacred Ashes.
Lovely! We can freeze to death while digging for the bones of a madwoman.
We then transition into an action scene that you could say looks similar to something you'd see for a hero shooter. The Warden also has glowing eyes when killing the High Dragon for unknown reasons. This trailer only vaguely resembles anything in the game, especially the combat, because the combat in Origins was the clunkiest thing you've ever seen. The same goes for Dragon Age 2 cinematic trailer. It shows default Magehawk fighting the Areol in this epic 1v1 battle where he rips them apart with blood magic powers. You know what this fight looks like in the game as a mage? You're running around the room trying not to die while you shoot off magic from a distance. There is nothing epic or dramatic about it. You just trying to survive because you're a bit squishy. And he is not. Another thing I want to say is the art style has always been changing since the very beginning. Part of that reason being each of the current 3 games use a different game engine to render everything. Another being there was some miscommunication between the writers and the visual art team throughout the series. Like one of the bigger things was the Kunaris not having horns and them kind of like retconning that later in the series to explain why Sten looks so much different than the rest of them from Dragon Age 2 onwards. The current style they are using now seems to be leaning more towards the art style of lead art director Matt Rhodes. And I'm here for it because I have always been a fan of his personal work. But if you go and look through his artwork, you can definitely see the similarities to what the trailer looks like and the gameplay teaser. Let's go back to the whole quips and jokes thing. People acting like that was just the whole trailer and it was just full of that stuff, and I don't really see it. Like, I watched it like legit multiple times and I just don't understand this critique. It's no more or less than what has been in other Dragon Age games. It's just showcasing the companions and giving you like a rough overview of who they are, their personalities, what faction they're in, what class they are, and I think it does fine in showing that. It fulfilled that purpose. I get it. I'm like, okay, cool, that's the Veiled Jumper. Clearly they know some stuff about the Alluvions that we've been trying to figure out what the heck they do for forever. Like, okay, that dude's a necromancer. He probably knows Dorian, part of the Morn Watch. Cool. Oh, and Antiva and Crow, another faction you can be. Rogue party member. Got it. I understand. But it's clearly meant to make all of them look cool and like people you want to have around and to get you hyped to interact with these characters, as that seems to be what they've changed the narrative focus of the game for. Because originally it was, of course, named Dreadwolf, and now it's become the Veilgaurd, which tells me the main narrative of the story no longer focuses on taking out the Dreadwolf, and is now focused on, yo, we gotta get together a squad and roll up on some eldritch horrors because something happened and now the world is screwed. And it's very Mass Effect 2, put together your squad, go on the mission of no return. Dragon Age has always had elements of lighthearted fun and comedy in the media. I'm counting the games, the comics, the novels, the movies, the TV show, well, the miniseries, I guess it would be. And without those lighthearted moments, it would be easy to become desensitized to all the awful things that do happen in the world. In all of the games, your party members will often have silly banter with each other. Some are more prone to quips than others, but even the most serious of the bunch will get a joke in from time to time, especially if you lean more toward comedic or sarcastic dialogue choices for your character. In Dragon Age 2, most people even pick the purple dialogue options for Hawke, which was intended to be the more humorous personality choice. These events of humor don't take away from things like the end of act finales in Dragon Age 2, or the tragic circumstances that lead to your character becoming a warden, the city of origin being one of the most tragic out of all of them. Dragon Age Inquisition has arguably the most heavy atmosphere of the 3 current games, yet those silly, lighthearted moments still exist, like the goat incident or playing pranks on people with Sarah. Even in the gameplay teaser, while it gives this sense of danger and urgency, there's still some lighthearted banter mixed in. You're going through this dark magic punk city of Minratho, so we've only heard about, we've only read about up to this point. We've barely seen anything of it, and now we actually understand why Dorian's basically calling Ferelden and stuff a backwater. Because yeah, compared to this, I understand now. The world looks great. It looks pretty. You're in this dark, dreary area. They got rain tech going and things go to hell right away. And you can feel like, hey, this is a serious situation. Bad things are happening. You should be concerned. This is the dark, gritty fantasy world. And then you've got Varric over here looking at the giant Terran sky again and going, well, here we go again. And that's just how it's always been. Especially when you take a character like Varric, who, while Dragon Age 2's over-the-topness of it all can easily be explained to, it was Varric embellishing the story, which I love. That whole narrative situation where it affected the gameplay. Like, he was in Dragon Age Inquisition too, and he was still the same person. He was in the trailers. That's just who Varric is. He's gonna be making jokes like that. It's part of his personality. But then you also see at the end of it the other side of Varric, where he's very concerned about his friend and honestly doesn't seem to want to end things badly with anyone. I did like the action-based combat that I saw, and the series has moved further away from being turn-based with every iteration, from Origins, which was supposed to be a bit of a move away from how the combat was in Baldur's Gate 2. And I'm glad they're no longer kind of trying to sit on that fence of action but also turn-based and point and click, and they just kind of move towards action, because trying to please both sides of that player base was not going to work out well for them, because they just kind of, it was mediocre on both sides and no one was really happy with it in the end. Another thing I noticed is people still complaining about the dialogue wheel and tone indicators. Tone indicators have always been a great addition, just for the simple fact that people can read things differently, which causes unwanted outcomes from the character saying something you didn't want. This happened even when you could read the entire line of dialogue because you didn't know what tone you were saying it in. It could have been you thought the character was saying something in a joking manner, when in reality it was aggressive and it starts a fight. And people also are still saying that you had more options back when you did not have the dialogue wheel. That was just the illusion of choice. If you play through Origins multiple times, you will notice that many of your options will still have only a handful of outcomes. You just got there a slightly different way. And I much prefer just being, hey, here's the few outcomes, here's a few dialogue options to go along with it. In terms of visuals and combat, Dragon Age has never really had a solid identity to it. And I honestly think it's because they listened a little too much to their fan base, because most of it has always been divided and had differing opinions on what the series should be, where it should go, how it should play, and no one really agreed on just one set way of it. By trying to please all of these people at once, everything was always muddied very last minute. It's like, we got to do this because these people want this. Oh, this crew wants this. But then, okay, the higher ups are telling us we need to implement this because everyone else is doing it. And it's just been torn in so many different directions from them trying to take feedback from every which way there was. And I remember even back when Dragon Age Origins first came out, people were complaining and were mad about the first game in the series because it differed too much from Baldur's Gate. And that's kind of on them for saying it was a spiritual successor to those games. But still, because it wasn't the thing that they remembered or wanted, they just were upset and didn't like it. This is nothing new. People were even mad when the comic series came out because they didn't reflect their personal timeline of events in their playthrough of the games. So a lot of people were mad because in the comic series, Alistair is king, and a lot of people were like, well, I didn't make him king. So this canon doesn't mean anything to me. None of this is important. It technically is still. Some of those events still happen regardless if he is king or not. But people were upset about this. People were upset in the other comic series when you see Fenris and he mentions that he's been alone this whole time and everyone left him. And then I believe it was said later on that no matter what you did in Dragon Age 2, everyone kind of splits apart at some point. And Fenris does end up left alone. No matter what, as well as all of the other party members, they all go their own ways just because of the circumstances of what happened in that game. But still, because it didn't echo their specific timeline, they decided they didn't like it. And it didn't count, and it was just fan fiction. And I don't know how one can make fan fiction of something they created or had a hand in creating. But okay, whatever you want to think. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's just a video game. If you don't like it, or the way the series is headed, you can easily go play something else. I know it can be upsetting when you're invested in the stories and characters, but you can't control something that isn't yours. It's okay to move on from something you enjoyed when you no longer enjoy it. And if a new game, comic, or any other media comes out that sparks your interest again, you're free to come back to it as well. It's easy. I've recently been playing through all the Dragon Age games, and there are things I like and dislike about all of them. There are things I remembered liking that I don't like anymore, and things that I dislike that aren't as big a deal as they seem to be at the time. Things change, people change, you change over time. And you know what? That's okay. Regardless, I'll be playing Veilgaurd on day one. I don't really expect anything. I'm just gonna take the game at face value for whatever it is, and I'll probably have a better experience as a result. That's what I do with most games. I don't expect them to be one way or the other. I don't expect certain things to happen in them. I can throw out theories and guesses as to what I think I might see, but I never expect any of it. I just go in, I look at the game, and I play it however it is presented for me to play it. And if I don't like it, then I don't like it. I move on to something else. Maybe I don't finish it. Maybe I do. And does it really matter in the end other than the experience I got from it? But hey, what do I know? I'm just a rando on the internet. Have a beautiful day.